First Class Fatherhood. That is where Alec Lace comes in with his popular podcast.
And one of the most interesting was on a podcast.
Alec Lace interviews high-profile fathers from actors to NFL players with a vision to change the narrative of fatherhood and family life.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood, a family-made media podcast. And the NFL season is back. They kicked off the 2022 season yesterday, and today I am joined by an absolute NFL legend. Mike Singletary joins me on the podcast today. Mike Singletary is a Hall of Fame Super Bowl champion linebacker who anchored the greatest defense that ever played in the history of the NFL, the 1985 Chicago Bears. Mike Singletary is a 10-time Pro Bowler, but just like with all the NFL dads that I bring on the podcast, who they are off the field is far more important than who they were on the field. And Mike Singletary is a former NFL Man of the Year. He's a first-class father all the way. I'm truly honored and pumped to have him on the podcast today. And just on a side note, if you're a fan of that 1985 Chicago Bears team, down there in the description below, you'll find the link to my interviews with quarterback Jim McMahon and wide receiver Willie Golt, both of that Super Bowl 20 Chicago Bears team. So go down there. While you're down there checking that out, smack the subscribe button and tap the like. Let's jump into it right now with Mike Singletary on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father Mike Singletary. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. Good to be a part of it.
Let's start like this here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
Well, we have 7 kids. The oldest is 35, the youngest is 24. So take your pick in there.
You got
12 years to have 7 kids, so it's all good.
Wow, you got grandkids too? How many grandkids?
We have 11. We had 2 in the last couple of months.
Wow, very cool. If you could, Mike, just for the listeners who don't know, just take a second to hit them with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Well, wow. It depends on what sector of life. Football player, played for the Bears, played college at Baylor, was very fortunate to have a good career in both college and professional level. Was very fortunate to play on some great teams, and now that I've been retired for many years, I'm working in a not-for-profit organization and education, health and mental wellness, and changing our perspective is what it's called. And so we're moving forward, trying to help kids and those people that live in low socioeconomic areas and trying to provide opportunities.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing. And obviously, you've had a legendary career on the football field. And I know you said 7 kids. So if you could, Mike, take me back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey. About how old were you when you first became a dad? And how did that experience change your perspective on life?
I was about 25. It was right after the Super Bowl. And, man, it changed my life. It was an incredible change. There were some things that I really knew for the first time in my life that I had to get straightened out. I had to kind of get properly aligned for being a dad. You know, being married was one thing, but now becoming a father was something totally different. And growing up in my household, being the last of 10 kids, it didn't go so well for my mom and dad. And finding out later on in life that I'm a lot like my father, but I didn't want the same outcome. So I really started reading and talking to people that I thought were great fathers, and asking a lot of questions, reading as much as I could, and praying a lot, and really trying to get ahead of the game. And I was very fortunate to find a lot of people that gave me some great advice, and I read the Bible a lot, trying to find all the wisdom that I could get in terms of what I needed to do to be a good father and a good husband, and to really get ready to prepare my kids for life. And that's really what it was all about.
Yeah, and Mike, I know finding a father figure is so important. I talk on this show, I harp on it, is the fatherless crisis we have in our country, where so many kids are growing up without a father or a father figure in their life. And if they don't find that father figure in sports through a coach or in the military through an instructor, something like that, and they find it out in the street, it's really what's leading to so many of these devastating problems that we're seeing all throughout our society. What's your take?
Well, I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and we were talking about this. He was just saying, Mike, how can a young man emulate what he's not seeing? And so when you look around our society, particularly in the lower socioeconomic areas, a lot of these young kids don't see fathers. So how do I know how to be a dad? How do I know what to do? How do I know how to raise a kid? How do I know how to be in relationships? So it's really important that more and more dads are able to allow themselves to be seen, first of all, by their own kids, and as well as being willing to be a mentor to others. I get asked all the time, how do I be a great dad? How do I be a great husband or whatever? I'm afraid to raise my kids because I didn't get it. I didn't get it when I was a kid, and so how can I give what I didn't get? And so it's important. The most important thing for me that I've learned is if I can be a good husband, if my wife and I can really set a tremendous example. We may not know anything about being a mom. We may not know anything about being a dad, but our kids are watching us all the time. And I think so many times moms and dads are trying to tell their kids what they should do better, what they should do differently. And at the same time, when their kids are looking at mom and dad's relationship, is inconsistent with what they're saying. And I think the greatest thing that parents can do is to really emulate what they want their kids to see. And I think I really believe that, with the exception of a few conversations, that if my kids just are able to see how I respond to my wife, how she responds to me, how I treat her, how I talk to her, how I love her, how we work out conflict. And it's not always great, but we're constantly working at it. But I think that goes so much further than, hey, don't do this, don't do that, and man, look at here, man, don't do you get in this situation? Don't do, people don't want to hear that. Your kids certainly don't want to hear it, but if they can see it, I think they can get a lot from that.
Yeah, very well said, Mike. And I know you brought up there too how much you read the Bible, and your faith I know is important in your life. As a matter of fact, about an hour before I jumped on this call with you, I did an interview with Jerry Jenkins, who wrote your biography years ago. And we were talking about not only the Father's presence in the home that's missing, but also our Heavenly Father's presence that's missing in our society. When did faith become a big part of your life, and how important was faith in raising your kids?
Well, faith was everything. Um, because if I can't have my kids understand that there is a God, I'm not it. And it's important to understand that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do things that are wrong. I'm going to screw it up. But I have a chance to always come back to the Father and say, Lord, help me to get this right. Help me to understand. Help me to humble myself and really understand what love is and how I need to respond in such a way to make a difference. And I just really believe that, faith is everything. Without faith, I can't even begin to tell my kids to think wonderfully about tomorrow. Uh, if I don't have faith, if I don't believe there's a God, if I don't believe that, there's something out there that's so much bigger than me. If I can't be forgiven for all the mistakes that I've made and are gonna make on a daily basis, then what the heck is the purpose? If there's no God, then I need to get a gun, I need to dig a hole, and I need to get my family and put us in there and just say, hey, everybody, protect your back. That's the best we can do if there is no God. And so to me, I just don't believe that we are some cataclysmic accident, some protons and neurons bursting into orbit, and there we are. Or I'm from the ape family and you're from the chimpanzee. I don't believe that. I believe that there is a God, and I believe that he created me, and I believe that he created me to be special. I believe that he created me to be something really, really wonderful if I have the courage to live up to it. And then if I have the courage to be in a marriage with my wonderful wife, and we can grow into a friendship that's absolutely amazing, and our kids can live off of that and grow off of that and have their own lives.
Yeah, really great stuff, Mike. I love that. And what is it that with changing our perspective, what is the type of work and messages that you're bringing? I know you said you work with the youth. Are you bringing them messages of faith, hope? Explain to me a little bit more, if you could, about changing our perspective and what it is that you do, what kind of work you do.
Changing our perspective is all about education, health, and mental wellness for kids. And I just believe that it's really helping our kids be responsible and understand that, maybe life isn't fair. Maybe where I am today is not the best place, but I don't have to stay here. And I got to take all the responsibility. I got to be accountable and be able to say, you know what? Maybe it's not fair how I got here. Maybe, life has been kind of rough for me, and maybe the place that I live isn't the greatest. But you know what? I'm coming out of this. I'm coming out of this because God created me, and he created me to live a great life. And what that looks like is going to depend on how I embrace that. That is a truth that if I embrace it, then I have a chance to live it and walk it out. And that takes courage, that takes faith. And to me, each and every day that we get up, we got to be walking towards that goal. We got to be walking towards knowing that there's something better. You know what? I got to choose every day to get up and live my life with the right attitude and be purposeful about what I'm doing and making a difference, and not just looking out for me, but looking out for those that are coming up after me, and try to make a difference in their lives as well.
Yeah, very well said, Mike. And one of the things that I love, I know you've been there already. I'm heading in your direction. I got 4 kids. My oldest is 16, so I haven't hit all these certain milestones yet in my own fatherhood journey. But how did you kind of handle it? What kind of advice did you give to your kids when they became old enough to start hitting that dating scene?
Well, you know what is, as far as the dating scene is concerned, it's just being able to just be honest with them, and let them know some of the mistakes that you made, and not expect that they're not going to make mistakes. The most important thing is that you got to get them the information. Not all of them are going to listen to it. I mean, I wish y'all, some of them are just like me, knuckleheads. Some of them are like their mother. They listen a lot better. But for those that are like me, I still say when they make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. You still got a chance. But just know that when they become teenagers and they start dating, one of the best things that you better be able to do really well is pray, because they're definitely going to make mistakes, and you can say, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you that's what was going to happen? So, you're going to say that a lot of times, but just stay on your knees. It'll all work out.
Yeah, and then pulling into that just a little bit more, Mike. Obviously, you were the nucleus there of arguably the greatest defense that ever played the game. You were physical on the football field. What kind of disciplinarian, though, were you as a dad with the kids growing up? And is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yes, it was different. It was different from the standpoint that I had a wife. My wife didn't let me discipline my kids the way I was disciplined. I probably would have killed a couple of them. For me, it was really sitting down and saying, Mike, you don't have to spank them for everything. We got to get creative here. There's some things you got to do, some things we got to take away. And so she really helped me understand that, there are some things that we can discuss. There are some things that, we just need to put up the consequences. There's something, but you got to be creative because every kid is different. And in order for you to be an effective disciplinarian, you got to find out how each of your kids are bent and really, really help them be able to see their faults and try as much as you can to make sure you head them off and knowing, hey, you know what? I know you really well. I know what you're thinking. Don't do that. Don't go in that direction. I try when they're teenagers to give them as much advice as I can, but prayer is the best thing. And I find that as they get older and they begin to have their own kids, I stop giving advice. I still pray, but I listen to them to come to me. Say, hey, Dad, I'm throwing my arms up. What do I do? How do I get this right? Because really then is when they're listening. But when they're teenagers, man, prayer and just staying with it, persevering, fighting the good fight. That's what we got to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to callous my mind for all these things coming my way very soon. And Mike, I'm kind of curious too. Obviously, coaching in the NFL, coaching athletes at all different levels for you. Was there a noticeable, getting back to the fatherless thing that we were talking about earlier, was there a noticeable difference for you coaching kids that came from a single parent home or grew up without a father when you got to coach them, as opposed to the kids that came from a two-parent family or grew up with a dad?
I tell you what, man, you notice it right away. Kids, it's different today. There were some kids that grew up in a single parent home, and but they had strong mothers. Mothers were tough, man. They were saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and but today with social media and all the other pressures of life and the pandemic and all the other things that have happened, the political climate, the social climate there are a lot of things that are facing kids today that I know I didn't have to face, and it's just so important to know that our kids need to know that when we say that we are believers, when we say that we love the Lord, when we say that we have faith, they need to be able to see it. They don't need to see me one day telling them how they need to pray and how they need to love the Lord, and the next day I'm choking one of them. They don't need to see that. It's too much inconsistency. They don't need to hear me saying how I hate this and how I hate that. I need to be saying, you know what, there is a God, and He's got it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Mike. And I know we talked there about the changing our perspective, and I love the work that you're doing there. What other kind of things are you working on right now? What other kind of projects you have? What's coming up next for you?
Well, we're currently getting ready to start a for-profit organization called Creator, and that will be a mental wellness program for adults. And so we've been helping kids, but there are a lot of adults saying, hey, we need some help. We need we need to figure out how to get up every day and have the right attitude and how to approach life with both feet on the ground and make a difference and live out our goals and be able to make great decisions and to be mentally aware of where we are, all of those little things. And we need tools to be able to guide our families and for today. So I think that I'm excited about this new organization that we're going to start, Creator. I'm excited about the lives that will change, corporations that will change. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, awesome. And I know mental health has become just such at the forefront of so many challenges right now with so many people, no matter what the age or where they come from. And I know one thing too, Mike, that's challenging for so many parents because of all the studies that have come out about playing football, with all of the results, whether how much we know or we don't know yet still about the CTE and the whole bit. It's a concern whether or not they should let their kids play. So I love to ask the NFL dads that I have on, what kind of advice do you have for the parents out there? What would you suggest for them is a good age for them to allow their kids to start playing contact football?
I think contact football is it's a great sport. I think kids maybe around 12 years old, I think is the best age for kids to start, because then they're pretty much developed. A lot of times when the kids 8, 9, 10, if they have a knee situation, if they have a shoulder situation, first of all, kids have to develop. And once they develop, now by the time they're 12 years old, 13 years old, if they have an injury, well, that bone structure is already fully developed, and it has a better chance to heal itself. But if that particular limb or joint or whatever at 8, 9, 10 years old hasn't even been developed yet, it's still trying to develop, and you have an injury, I think it really can cause some issues that with the structure of that bone or the structure of that muscle. So I think around 12 years old, that's what we did for our kids, our boys, when they were playing football.
Very cool. All right, Mike, last thing I want to hit you with here. I love to ask all the dads that get on the podcast. You probably touched on it some during the interview here, but what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
I think one of the best things that a new dad can do is really sit down before having family and make sure that you and the wife are really on the same page. This is how we want to raise our kids. This is how we want to discipline. This is how we want to handle disagreements. This is how we want to handle sleepovers. This is how we want to handle all of those things. My wife and I had to talk all the time about things that she grew up thinking about it one way. I grew up thinking about it another way. And, when the phones first came out, for instance, I told my wife, our kids, when they get home with that phone, those phones are going straight in a basket over the fireplace. And they're not touching those phones. They got one call at night before they go to bed. And that's that's a phone call to their friend or whoever it is. They got one phone call. And, they thought, you would have thought that we were the worst parents ever. What are you talking about? All of our friends have a phone. They're talking all that. I do not care. You got to make sure, mom and dad, that you're on the same page. Because if you're not, guess what? There's no one quicker that can detect something easy as mom and dad fighting over them. And it is not worth it. The most important thing is mom and dad got to be on the same page if you're going to have any success. That is the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Mike Singletary, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, and God bless you.
You have been listening to First Class Fatherhood. First Class Fatherhood is a family-made media podcast. Please visit www.firstclassfatherhood.com or www.familymade.com to find out more details. You can order First Class Fatherhood advice and wisdom from high-profile dads on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Proverbs 22:6 tells us, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will never depart from it." God bless, and I'll catch you next time.